Hello and welcome to Joy in Our Town. I'm your host, Tammy Johnson. Joy in Our Town brings you the issues and problems that are faced in the local community with the hope of finding a solution. You can also check us out on Facebook at WSFJ-TV51. Join us again next week for Joy in Our Town. So tell us, what is sleep apnea?
Sure. So that's kind of the hot topic lately. Everybody's talking about sleep apnea. Sleep apnea is when we sleep, everything relaxes and we can actually stop breathing in our sleep. And if that happens enough, it can cause a lot of health problems.
What are there different types? Is it just one?
Sure. So there's obstructive sleep apnea, which is by far the most common. And then there's central sleep apnea. Obstructive sleep apnea is the one that's really associated with the majority of the health problems. That's when we breathe in and our airway collapses, just like if you take a drink through a straw and you drink a thick milkshake. You know, when you drink that milkshake and you suck too hard and that straw collapses? That's exactly what happens in the back of your throat. That airway just collapses and you have to sort of take a deep breath to get that air in. So that's obstructive. Central is when your airway's open and you just don't take a breath.
Human trafficking is known as the modern-day form of slavery. That's probably the easiest way to put it. It's basically people who are being enslaved for either sex or labor. Those are the two main types of human trafficking. It's not always through force, like people would assume, like you would see it like in movies. Sometimes it's either got to be through force, fraud, or coercion. Those are the three ways that human trafficking is defined, through those three ways. So we see a lot of, specifically in Ohio, we see a lot of sex trafficking, especially in the central Ohio area. And then we also do see some labor trafficking that takes place as well.
So how do traffickers, how do they solicit their victims? Like how, you say it's a big problem in central Ohio. How do they solicit them? How do they get them to come on board?
Most of the victims, the average age into entry of this is 12 to 14. So these are very, very young girls. Typically, there are boys, but the majority of them are young girls who are in that vulnerable stage of life. You know, they're going through changes, they're starting to fight with their parents, issues with friends at school. And it's those vulnerabilities that those pimps are picking up on. They're seeing the trend of that age group, and they're realizing that these girls and these young boys are looking for attention in the wrong places, and they're going up to these kids once typically they run away from home or are out at the mall or at the park, and they're telling them, hey, I'll buy you this, or you know, they'll give them compliments like, you're beautiful, you're so talented at this sport.
What are some of the laws that are put in place to help support the small minority business owners?
Well, back in 1977, the United States government came out with the Community Reinvestment Act. And what that law provided for certain census tracts, that people lived in low to moderate income neighborhoods, that banks lent money into those areas. So we're talking, you know, your large banks, we're talking, you know, your medium-sized banks, as well as even credit unions, making sure that they were lending money into those areas, and they got graded on how well they did. So if they got an unsatisfactory, then that way they had to do a lot more to work in those low to moderate income areas, just to make sure like there was an even playing field for everyone in those communities. So, which, you know, back in 77, you had a lot of redlining where, you know, folks would not lend money into those areas. So the law came around to help change that. And so you'll find different banks that will still continually work hard at that today to make sure that they are lending money in a lot of these areas.
So give us your background on the information that you have on payday lending, because that's a big deal now.
Oh, payday lending. Well, I've been working to try to get better regulations and laws against payday lending since 2006. And as some of your viewers may remember, we had a legislative change in 2008 and a ballot initiative that affirmed that people in the state of Ohio want payday regulation of payday loans. Unfortunately, that was kind of a hollow reform because the business model of payday lending has not changed over the years. It's a 2-week single pay loan, and even though we changed the laws, what the lenders have done have just been licensed or registered under other lending statutes and continued to make the same kinds of loans.
Wow. How big of a problem is this in Central Ohio? Because I know I see them everywhere.
Well, they are everywhere. If you draw a big ring around Columbus, just the storefront payday shops that like the Center for Responsible Lending has been able to map, you'd have over 150 just in that ring, and that does not count any of the internet paydays that people have ready access to.
So those are legit.
Well, I'm not going to say that they are.